So I'm not gonna lie, struggling. Everything's getting a little bit harder, but it's pretty choppy, so it's making hard work. Hello and welcome to Simon's Random Adventures. Today's adventure hopefully is going to be a bit of an epic one, because the plan is that tomorrow I'm going to be getting in that lake behind me and swimming from one end to the other. And that lake is Lake Windermere, England's largest lake at 10.5 miles or 17 kilometers long. And if all goes well, some point tomorrow, I'll be stepping out at the finishing line just over there. Wish me luck. The course for the swim would see me start at Felfoot, a lovely National Trust park at the south end of the lake. Being part of the pink wave, swimmers hoping to average 33 to 35 minutes per mile, I'd be setting off at 9:10. For the first 4 miles, we'd follow the east shoreline, where the tree line would offer some protection from the prevailing winds, before making our way over to the west shoreline. At around 6 miles, there'd be the small matter of navigating safe passage across the Mallard ferry crossing that shuttles cars and passengers across the lake. Once across, we'd make our way past the islands of Bowness before hitting the final stretch to Waterhead, where a giant inflatable duck would mark the finish. But before all of that, I needed to get checked in at my campsite, where navigating the gates was proving more difficult than it should have been. I didn't appreciate it went this way. Having made a pig's ear of the first gate, you'd have thought I'd have learnt my lesson at the second one. Clearly not. I eventually made it through, where it's time to start what would be my home from home for the next 24 hours. Way longer than I thought it would take. With the tent up and my gear stowed away, it was time to go get signed in. Hello, 345 please. Registration's done, so taking a walk back to the campsite. Got some nice swag, got myself a commemorative hoodie to go with the collection. But I thought it'd be worth taking a minute just to sort of talk about why Windermere, why this particular weekend. And for me it's a difficult one, because a year ago this weekend I lost my dad after a short battle with cancer, and my dad was my hero. He raised me and my sister as a single parent from a young age, so when we lost him, it left a massive hole in our lives. But one of the things that we had in common was a shared love and passion for swimming, and even as recently as March last year, at the ripe old age of 72, he was doing the best part of 200, 250, even 300 laps in a swimming pool at a single time. And taking on this challenge, swimming Windermere, it's a way for me to remember him and sort of mark the occasion, I guess, as best as I know how. And also for my sister-in-law, Teresa, who we also sadly lost only sort of 3-4 months ago to cancer also. So this swim's for them, and it's also to raise some money for Macmillan Cancer Support, who were just brilliant in supporting me and my family during what was just, you know, the most difficult and challenging of times, really. So yeah, that's the most motivation behind it. But yeah, time to crack on, I think. So 5:15 in the morning. I hadn't planned on getting up this early. I was hoping to lay until about 5:30, 5:45, but being on the campsite, lots of wildlife, sheep, owls, birds, God knows what. And also the people in the tent next to me, I think they've been out on a night hike or something, because they came back about 4:15, torches all over the place. So yeah, a bit of an earlier one than planned, but hey ho. Plan is now to get to the start point, get myself checked in, get loosen up, get in a wetsuit and get swimming. With all the essentials taken care of, there was nothing left to do but go for a swim. Here we go, this is it. 17 kilometers that way. Right, gonna keep it quick. 1 mile in, feeling good. Goggles were a faff at the start, lots of fogging up, but just gone past the 1 mile marker. Gonna get some food in me and then we'll crack on before I get run over. Three miles done. There's the 3 mile marker. Big boat behind me. Last 2 miles been pretty good. Got into a nice rhythm. Yeah, so far so good. Not a bad day for a swim. So, about halfway, 5.5 miles. A forced stop because there was a ferry crossing. So, I'm not gonna lie, struggling. Just kind of getting tired. Everything's getting a little bit harder. I think it's psychological as much as anything, if I'm brutally honest. And to stop for that ferry, I think it's a bit of a blessing. So, there's some food, hopefully get moving, but it's pretty choppy. And I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but it's pretty choppy, so it's making hard work. But we crack on.
1 eternity later.
Yup, that's me. Since you last saw me, things had taken a considerable turn for the worse. And the last 2.5 hours of swimming had easily been the most brutal and emotionally taxing of my life. Stick around until the end to find out what happened and what went wrong. But it's fair to say that when I did eventually reach the finish line, I was in need of a cuddle. Once I'd waddled my way across the finishing line, all that was left to do was to collect my medal, collapse on the floor, and contemplate my life choices. So here we are. This is the morning after the day before, and I thought I'd take a minute, just kind of reflect, I guess, with the benefit of 12 hours, maybe a little bit longer, hindsight really on how it went. I'm gonna do this straight off the cuff, no fancy editing, etc., because I think it's important, kind of, I guess, just to be as honest and as raw as possible. So, for context, I did the swim in 6 hours and 35 minutes. So on the one hand, I'm incredibly happy just to swim 17 kilometers from one end to the other. In of itself is a great achievement. I hope to do it in 6 hours. But if I'm being kind to myself, it was brutal. Probably harder than I expected. So it's probably worth kind of, I guess, breaking down what happened. So at the end, I was done. I was an absolute mess. And I got out of the water almost just on pure adrenaline, got my medal, and then just collapsed in a heap. And I was just done. I was just absolutely wrecked. But it's probably worth kind of, I guess, explain how I got to that point. So the swim was probably, for me, kind of broken down into 3 parts. So the first couple of miles were fine. I'd say from the start to mile 4, no problems. Everything was going well. It took a little while, probably about half an hour to get into a nice rhythm, muscles to loosen up, etc. But for the most part, those first 4 miles, roughly 2 hours of swimming, they were okay. I was stopping at every mile. I was taking on my sort of fluids. I was taking on my fuel, doing a little bit to camera. And everything was okay. Everything was fine. And then somewhere around mile 5, I remember when I stopped to take a feed on. So I got to mile 5, stopped, went to get some food out my bag. I just felt this kind of dizziness. And I've had it before. So for context, I can't do roundabouts, I can't do teacups, any kind of, spinning just makes me feel nauseous and uncomfortable. And it was that type of feeling. Probably for about 10 seconds, I was struggling to kind of focus. And then it settled down. I was like, okay, I need to keep an eye on this. And that's probably when it all started to go wrong. So I got to mile 6, okay. But mile 7, as I'm swimming, I could see the mile marker. I went past it slightly, popped up to take some food, and I could just feel myself wanting to retch. And that's what I did. So I just started heaving up. Not pleasant because I still had this sort of dizziness at the same time. So I'm kind of vomiting and I've got this sort of dizziness, but just trying to remain calm, holding on to my toe float. Like I know it will pass. Um, but I couldn't take on any fuel. So I had some water, but the idea of eating anything, any jelly babies, energy gels, just completely out the window. So I put my head down, carried on, and that happened again at mile 8 and mile 9. So whilst I was swimming, no problem. Being honest, the water at Windermere is disgusting. You could just taste it, and I don't think that helped. I don't think it was the reason, but it certainly doesn't help when you've got this sort of disgusting water that's inevitably getting into your system. But yeah, at mile 8, mile 9, same thing happened. Popped my head up to feed and just started vomiting. Yeah, I couldn't take anything on as a result. And at this point, I'm suffering because I'm not getting any fuel into my body. I'm being sick, so a lot of nutrients, etc., leave my body. So I was in a bad way. Um, but in a weird way, I was okay with that. One of the things I've kind of learned through this kind of training and through these type of events is something Ross Edgley talked about, which is resilience is strategically managed suffering. So as uncomfortable as I was, as tired as I was, as unpleasant as the whole kind of experience was at that time, I knew that if I just kept following the process, just putting one arm in front of the other, inevitably I would get to the finishing line. So that's what I did. So I decided at mile 9 I wasn't going to stop at mile 10 to even attempt to kind of feed or take in any fluids, because clearly that stopping was what was triggering it. It's something called vestibular motion sickness. So basically, where for the best part of 6 hours, I'm doing that from side to side, cold water. When I stop, my mind, my inner ears, etc., they're struggling to kind of refocus, and that's what's caused the sickness. So I decided at mile 10 that I was just going to power through it. I was just going to go through, slog it out, which is what I did. It was tough because I hadn't had any real fuel for the best part of 4.5 miles. So what's that? Just over 2 hours worth of swimming, and obviously being sick didn't help. But yeah, I kind of gutted it out. I took a moment at the finish just to sit down for 30 seconds, 60 seconds before I got out of the water, try and get my legs back, make sure that I wasn't going to be sick anymore. And then yeah, inevitably got up, wobbled my way across the finishing line, and then just kind of collapsed really. So yeah, I told myself in the moment I would never, ever, ever, ever do anything like that again. But even as I sit here now, kind of like, oh, okay, well, I feel fine now. Bit tired, bit croaky. But yeah, I was kind of both disappointed, but also incredibly proud because I guess it's kind of practicing what you preach. It's one thing to say, just battle through it. Pain is temporary. What's the saying? Pain is temporary. Regret is permanent. But I'm really quite proud of myself because I kind of lived that in that moment, in those sort of dark miles from 7 to 11. I kind of always knew that I would finish. I knew that I would finish, and it's just how much I was willing to suffer along the way. So in a weird way, I think the adversity kind of So in a weird way, I think the adversity has made the experience all the more, I wouldn't say special, but there's something about the adversity, just overcoming that. I think for me personally, it's more rewarding than if I just got in, absolutely smashed it in, you know, some wonderful, fabulous time. I think having to overcome that adversity just kind of makes the whole journey, the whole experience of not just Windermere, but Coniston and Knowleswater, all the more rewarding, really. So yeah. But I think the plan now is to kind of rest up, give myself a few days, and then figure out what comes next, if anything. So yeah. But before I sign off, I just want to say a massive, massive thank you to everybody that has donated. I genuinely mean it. I was just blown away by sort of people's generosity. And I think at last count, when factoring in match fundraising, my employers' match contribution, etc., the number's well over £2,600, which will go to Macmillan Cancer Care, who are just incredible in everything they do. And, you know, 98% of their funding come through donation and pledges. So if you did donate, thank you so much. It means a lot to me. So signing off.